wherever you're fine.
All right, let's see if I can make this work.
People will let you know.
Yeah.
All right.
We're not shy like that.
So everybody's read the chapter. How many people feel comfortable and knowledgeable about woody ornamentals?
No.
Right. So what I'll tell you is, I've got a bachelor's and master's in horticulture. I spent 25 years as a landscape contractor. I've had nurseries, greenhouses. So I've been in the business for over 40 years. There's a lot I don't know. I learn something new all the time. So we'll sort of hit the high points today and give you some information that you can use. I'll tell you real quick, I hadn't told Ashley, but at some point in time, you may want to make a trip over to Alamance County to Medlin. We put in 2 years ago a demonstration orchard. So we've got peaches, apples, pears, plums, cherries, pawpaw, muscadines, bunch of grapes, blackberries, blueberries, something else I forgot. Anyway.
Is there information on that on the Alamance extension
I
site?
think it should be, right. We'll be glad to do a tour for you sometime if you're interested in seeing that. So it's a demonstration about how you would grow fruit trees, how do you prune fruit trees, how do you thin fruit, what will grow, what won't grow. So we know that historically plum trees bloom too early. So part of what our master gardeners doing, they're collecting data. So we know that we had Ozark Premier plums blooming the 1st of March. Are they going to make fruit this year? Probably. I've got peach trees blooming now. Maybe. So down to 30, we're probably okay. If it goes down to 26, we're probably going to lose our peaches. So we're collecting information, seeing what will work and what won't work. So you may want to have a trip at some point in time just to see what's what. Let's see if it's working. Okay. So you're looking for information about woody ornamentals, and there's all this stuff out there. And what I would suggest is, at this point, there's maybe too much information, because people have some kind of problem, and they want to get on Google and find their own answer, and they almost always come up with something that's just totally wrong. So they think they got some exotic California oak death something, and it's just drought. But they got all these books out here. There aren't any secrets. So I can tell you how to grow about anything that you want to grow. Around here, it's not a secret at all. There's some basic things you have to know. You look at Learn from Lance. Lance works for Bayer. So naturally, his solutions involve Bayer products. What my job, Ashley's job, what's your job is to get people unbiased to research the information. We're not selling a service, we're not selling a product, we're trying to tell people the real story. Okay.
Excuse me, the first slide, are those books you recommend?
No recommend at all. No. These are books you don't need. You don't need those at all. Maybe a little hard to see there. Crepe myrtle, we've got 2 different colors of flowers. So there's kind of a lavender and a white flower there. So who can explain what's going on with that tree? Any ideas?
Is there a graphic?
No? So I'll show you. So typically what happens with any kind of a multi-stem tree at the nursery is they'll put 2 or 3 rooted cuttings together in one pot. To get a sowable plant faster, you plant 1 cutting, it grows a foot, you've got to cut it off and force out new sprouts. They'll put in 2 or 3 cuttings at one time. That's what happened there. So you can see the difference in the bark on the stems. We've got one that is a white variety, the others are the lavender growing together there, just a mistake at the nursery.
Yeah.
A little hard to see here, so this is weeping cherry. Yet you see these white flowers up there at the top, so that's the rootstock. So it's a grafted tree, grafted in there somewhere. We've got a sprout coming out below the graft that we've never cut off, and so now we've got this upright growth and white flowers in that tree. So you can see a lot of interesting stuff out there as you're riding around. I saw this a couple of years ago, so it's a quince, but somehow I guess a bird put a spirea in there, so you've got kind of a combination of things. So there's lots of different things you can see out there just riding around looking. Okay, so most people don't know, that gardening, landscaping is work. And people typically, this time of year, there's lots of plants in the garden center and blooming and pretty, and people get excited. I'm gonna buy this stuff and take it home and chunk it to clay somewhere, and it's gonna be wonderful. And then you see this happy couple here, and it's like, oh, this, stand around and look at everything, it's gonna be wonderful. But it's really more like this. You know, any kind of garden is work. It's hard work. That's how it is. I did learn one thing though. When you start to Google dirty, sweaty gardener, you got to be careful because you can get some results. Not necessarily just that. Okay. So we've got 4 categories of ornamentals here, and there's some gray area in between. So you look at, they're saying shrubs 15 feet or less, and there's shrubs that get to be certainly bigger than 15 feet. We've got trees that are shorter than 15 feet. Some of the Japanese maples, I would say, would be shorter than 15 feet, but there still are trees. So just kind of categories there to talk about different things that you would see out there, but it's not a real hard and fast rule. Have you already had landscape design? Okay. So that's the first step. It's where most people get in trouble. Most questions you're going to have are people have bought something, planted it, and it did not do well. Or it did well, and it got too big, and this is now what you do. This whole process here is what you need to do first. Think about what you're going to plant, where you're going to plant it, how is it going to do? Is it really going to work in that situation or not? Most of the time, this time of year, people get excited. And they go to the garden store, and they got all this beautiful stuff there, and they take it home, and they plant it, and then they have issues. So plant selection, we talk about this, and what can you plant? I mean, there are lots of things you can plant. You don't have to plant Japanese hollies and red peppers. There are other things out there that work very, very well, but people have to think about that, and they usually don't, unfortunately. Okay, so on the NC State website there, so if you're looking for information on plants, there's a good place to start. So they got the gardening website there. They changed this a couple of years ago to make it more user-friendly, and of course now it's worse. So I have a hard time finding stuff there, but lots of good references on this website. So you can kind of click on the left-hand side over there, and it gets you to the plants section. The plant section, all kinds of different fact sheets that you would get there. So here's like a database of shrubs. If you're trying to find good information on shrubs, there's a database of shrubs, you follow that through, and then it gives you a whole list of things here, all different kinds of shrubs that we can grow in this area. It works very well. And then you can even go down to an individual fact sheet on this plant. But sometimes you'll find the plant tags at the garden centers may not be totally accurate. They've got a tag on there and hopefully has the right name, but the cultural information may not be right. So you can sort of follow up with this and see if it's really what you would want to have. Okay, who knows much Latin? Who wants to learn some Latin? Okay, so it's very important. Because you know that plants have common names and they have scientific names, and it can be confusing to people. So you look at a plant called sweet shrub. Who's familiar with sweet shrub? It's a very nice deciduous plant. It's kind of an old-timey kind of plant, but it has a lot of common names, so it can be very confusing. Sweet shrub, sweet Betsy, is another common name for it. Carolina allspice. We're all talking about the same plant here. Strawberry shrubs, that's a really wonderful fragrance to the flower. And sweet bubby. So my grandmother called hers Sweet Bubby, so that's a fairly common name around Alamance County. But if you were to go to New York City and ask for a Sweet Bubby, would you get a sweet shrub?
You might get something you don't want.
Yeah, you might get arrested. I don't know. Yeah. But if you ask for Calacanthus floridus, that's going to be your sweet shrub. And anywhere you go, they understand that. So you don't have to memorize a lot of Latin. Just be familiar with what the scientific names are. So when you're looking for a specific plant, you can ask for it and have a good chance of getting it. Okay, so we talk about shrubs and talk about forms. So as we're thinking about landscaping and where we're going to plant what, and all these plants have a particular form. So you're trying to find that. So if you have a low window, you wouldn't necessarily want to have an upright growing tall plant because it's going to be a problem. Block the window, you've got to prune it, it's going to be an issue. So we just know that plants have different forms, and you want to think about that as you're selecting plants to make sure that you get the right plant in the right place. Trees are the same thing. They all have different forms there, so you want to make sure you pick the right form tree to go in the right spot so it doesn't become a problem later on, and we'll look at some problem trees here in a little bit. So we'll talk about existing trees. I'm also a certified arborist, and I do a lot of tree evaluations around the county because people don't understand what trees do and what kind of problem they can be. So we've got some trees here that were saved. So those trees have been saved. No. So the rule is anything within 30 feet of the foundation of the house, when you're building a house, goes away. Doesn't matter what it is, it goes away. You probably cannot save that tree because you'll have root damage from construction traffic. Now, if it's a really nice white oak, you move the house. You can't move the tree. You can't save the tree. You move the house. Within 30 to 60 feet, at that point in time, then you think about what you can save and what you can't save. Within 30 feet, they just go away automatically. You're not going to be able to save them because of construction damage. So real good publication you can find on the NC State website, and that's going to give you a rule of how much root area you need to protect. So typically people that are builders or graders, whatever, they feel like if they haven't hit the bark, hit the trunk, we're good. They're not thinking about the roots at all. But one of the formulas here will tell you that for every inch of trunk diameter, you should save 1.5 feet of what they call the critical root zone. So a 30-inch oak would have a 45-foot critical root zone. That's a radius. So that's like 90 feet around the tree. Those are roots you have to save. Now, roots go out past that. Roots go way out past that, but that's sort of the minimum amount of roots you have to save if you're going to save this tree. Okay, you sort of see here, so what I will tell you, and with all my consultations, I tell people, one thing I can tell you for absolute sure, the tree is going to die or it's going to fall. Now, I can't tell you when that's going to happen, but I can tell you that is going to happen. This tree here, so we had a big thunderstorm back in 2011, and this tree blew over, got the corner of the mobile home in the shed, and there's the root system. So people have the tendency to think, you know, this 80-foot tall tree has got tap roots down 20, 30 feet in the ground, and that's not true. And our soil, virtually every tree we have here, will have a root system that's probably within the top 24 inches of soil. It's going to be wide, spreading, and very, very shallow. So we get a situation where we have a lot of rain, a lot of wind, we've got a very shallow root system there. Now it's very extensive. If you have root damage, these things will go over, and that does happen.
Wow.
So the tree there blew over, just, you know, but that whole sod area is just filled with tree roots. But they're not very deep. You get a big wind, it just goes up. There's one there, so that's happened, that's my house in Michael. So we got home early from work, and I'm watching the trees go back and forth, and my neighbor says, I think that tree is going to fall over. That's where my wife's brand new Suburban was parked. And so I'm going out there, I moved the car within 10 seconds, that tree fell right where her car was parked. Look, close. Well, we had a lot of rain, a lot of wind. This hickory was about 80 feet tall, and it just couldn't stand up. There's the root ball there. My son's 6'5", so he's standing beside the root ball there. So what happened in this situation is, so this is a new development. It was wooded. So they cleared the lots, and they left a little strip about 20 foot wide of trees between the two houses. Well, those trees used to have a lot of friends, and they shared the wind load. Now their friends are gone. So you've got these tall, skinny trees with big crowns, and they have no protection. You get a big wind, and the tree goes over. Bradford pear, you probably have seen this, they will fall apart. Now, I'm not totally opposed to Bradford pears. If you want to plant one, in the backyard somewhere, away from the house, it's pretty when it blooms. It smells horrible. And it will fall apart. But, for 20 years, you could have a nice tree. But I wouldn't have it close to the house or close to the driveway because they will fall apart like that. All right. Who can diagnose what happened to this tree? Any ideas? Is that insect, disease? So what I will tell you, if you see a tree like that, it's dead. It may linger for another year or two, but it takes a long time for a mature tree to die, generally speaking. They just decline, and finally will die. So here we have new construction. And I thought, well, we're going to save this tree, and we'll make a little cutout here in the sidewalk, but they graded, they poured concrete, poured the sidewalk, did all this fussing around there to save the tree, not thinking that they had damaged a lot of the roots, and within a year's time,
Wow.
tree's gone. So that was a really bad, this is over at Elon University, somebody there should have said, no, you can't save that tree. You need to take that down. It'd been so much easier and cheaper to take it down before they poured the concrete than it is once the sidewalk is there, but it's gone. Here's a situation where they're trying to protect the trunk of the tree, and that's a good start, but they're not following the rule. So we're not getting 1.5 feet per inch of trunk diameter, so that's probably a good 30-inch oak tree there. We probably got a 12-foot radius, maybe, instead of 45. They fill the entire lot with about 18 inches of soil to build a house. There's no way those trees are going to survive. You can see the cut roots there, put in a little drain tile and all that. If you're going to save a tree, save a tree. They're just kind of pretending like they're doing it. And the part with this is, once the house is built, people move in, they think, oh, we're golden, we cut nice trees, and 2-3 years later, they decline and die, and they never put 2 and 2 together. That's the builder's fault. So if you want to protect trees, you need to have a sufficient root zone there. You need to fence it off. You don't park your tractors. You don't put piles of bricks, building material, anything. Nothing goes in there. It's fenced off. It's mulched. You got a sign, and you're going to save that tree. If you can't do that, you probably will not save the tree. Yes, ma'am.
You have the safety zone going all the way around. I'm sure that's the best thing. But
Yes.
what if it's encroached just on one side?
You sometimes get by with that. So it depends. So you could probably lose 25% of the root zone and be okay.
Ish.
Ish. Right. So you wouldn't want to come up real close to the trunk on one side and say, oh, I got this half over here, that's good, but this half is gone. That'd be a problem. So as many of the roots as you can save. Best. Okay.
Question here.
Yes, ma'am.
Repeat the measure for the critical root zone.
Right, so it's 1.5 feet radius per inch of trunk diameter. So a 30-inch oak would have a 45-foot radius around it as critical root zone. So real quick, we'll talk about topping trees. Never, ever, ever. There's no reason to top a tree.
Someone knocks on Duke Power.
Yeah. Well, they do have all of them, actually.
Yeah, so the problem with Duke Power is they're mandated to keep the lines clear. And homeowners, typically, and I'll show you some pictures in a little bit, people plant trees where they shouldn't plant trees.
Right.
And I worked in Orange County for a couple of years working with Alamance, and we had tree board meetings in Hillsborough, and people were up in arms about cutting the trees. I understand that. But the Duke Power people said, what if you've got an elderly person, they're on oxygen or something, and tree board was, well, we don't care. But now, I like trees as much as anybody, but a tree is not more important than a person's life. So if you got a situation like this where the tree is underneath the power lines, they're cutting it back, remove the tree, plant something that is compatible with the power line, and you'll be much happier. Okay, then we're thinking about functions. We talked about the form of trees and shrubs and how that work together, and then functions where do you want shade? Do you want a screen? You've got neighbors you don't want to see. Maybe so. Who knows what that plant is?
Italian?
Right, so that's red-tip Photinia. So back in the late 70s, early 80s, this plant was sold by the millions.
Yeah.
Fast-growing, beautiful new red foliage, did great for a while. And then we had this thing called Intimasporium leaf spot that hit it, and it wouldn't kill all of them, but if you had a hedge of 10, it'd kill the first one, second one, fourth, and fifth one, or something. You could spray a fungicide to control that, but you're talking about spraying every 7 to 14 days for 4 months. So that plant now is out of the industry. So I very rarely, I might see one at Walmart every now and then, but they just don't sell anymore because of the disease problems. But there may be a time when you do need to have a screen. You could have neighbors like this.
Yes, on one street.
There you got college students. You might live by college students, and they're having a good time, and that's fine. But they might be making a little bit of noise, or you might not want to watch them in the pool. But what I would tell you is, I was looking at a picture, I went, that looks like that'd be fun. So I did that. That's my backyard, my son and daughter-in-law there. But see, I went one step further. I got a jacuzzi. I got a little fountain going in there. It was fun. The water was cold, so I didn't do that. So there are times, really, a fence is going to be a better choice. So if you need screening from a neighbor, if you plant a hedge of something, if it's red tips or whatever else it is, at some point in time, you might start losing the plants. That might get too big, it's too hard to prune. A fence, in some occasions, can be better than a hedge. So here's a fence. So this is the house we used to live at. So my neighbor built this privacy fence. The chain link fence was ours. We used to have dogs. It's not 6 foot, but it's 8 foot tall. And when she built that, I thought, it kind of hurt my feelings. A bit there. Now, I'll have to say 2/3 of my backyard is garden. Was. Vegetable garden. But that's not bad. I mean, it was neat. I kept the weeds pulled. I thought it was okay.
Gorgeous.
But she built the fence. But somebody told me at one point in time, well, maybe she don't want me to see what she's doing. Okay, well, that's fine. It's okay. Now, my neighbors on that side, they got tomatoes, squash, you name it, extra produce.
Fence lady got nothing.
This one, they got nothing. They got nothing. So she missed out completely on the produce. And my master gardeners think I'm kind of funny. So the summer stuff, I don't really like that much. So I typically have grown like 100 tomato plants. I don't eat tomatoes. But I love to grow them and give them away. So now I don't have a garden space. We moved to a development that has a lot of trees and shade. And people say, I got space. You can come garden in my house. Yeah, I could, but it's not as convenient as having it in the backyard. Okay. So we go back to our fence. So now that's a landscaping problem. So how do I deal with 18-inch wide space between chain link and the 8 foot tall wood fence there? I could use the Lady Banks rose. We don't have really many good upright shrubs. There might be something in there, but the yard's small and don't have much garden space. I'm trying to get everything in that I can. So the first year I said, I'll do potatoes. Potatoes take up a lot of room. That's a long, long crop. So you plant that in March, you're not pulling those up until July, so that interferes with planting your summer stuff. I'll put potatoes in there. Worked pretty good digging potatoes in an 18-inch wide space. For me, it's a challenge. But it was okay, so that worked out all right. But I thought, I need to find something I can harvest a little bit easier. So next year was corn. So I can pick that standing up. That worked okay. The problem with corn is it has to be cross-pollinated. And they typically recommend to have 3 or 4 rows. So I said, well, I can get past that. I can take my leaf blower and go down the road, blow the pollen off the tassels. It's fine. It's fine.
Oh my gosh.
My son at that time was going to East Carolina, and he thought that was kind of redneck to hell. But really, I said, this is urban farming. You know, that's a real thing there. I'm growing food in the backyard. It was pretty good. So then the year after that, I thought, how about beans? Beans. So bush beans, okay, but you know, picking bush beans, I don't enjoy it that much. I can get down pretty good, not get up so good. Pole beans, okay, well, that's something I can do there. Of course, with pole beans, you got to have a trellis, right? So I built the trellis there. My trellis is 10 foot tall.
You got one.
That looks expensive.
Yeah. So I got a master gardener with a bunch of bamboo in her woods. So I go to her house, cut a bunch of bamboo, got the trellis material from Johnny's Seed Company there. I've got the soil prepared, I've got drip irrigation in there, and they're growing very, very well. I hadn't really thought the whole thing through, because what happens when you get there? So now I've got a 10-foot wall of green beans, and you can pick them off a 6-foot ladder, but the row's like 80 feet long. That's a lot of up and down, up and down, up and down. So there's got to be a solution. How do you pick the green beans? That works. Yeah. Good. Now, the tricky part with this is, you got to have a driver. My wife went interested, but we had a daughter at that time was 15. She was learning how to drive. Now, she was interested in driving, fine. But she didn't have real good coordination between gas and brake. And she threw me out about 2 times. The truck, I said, okay, we won't do that anymore. That's just work. So I ended up planting some peach trees and apples in there, kind of just spalliated them on the fence. And that was better. I don't know how to do it now, but that was a solution. Fine. Okay. We're just talking about function there, wind breaks, barriers there. Wind breaks are a little hard for us to do, especially in town. You need a big, so a single row of pines, not much of a wind break there. You can do pretty good with barrier plants. So this plant here is an evergreen barberry. You can sort of see thorns there. These thorns are 2 to 3 inches long, and they are razor sharp. And you get a good hedge of these things going, nobody's going to go through that, at least not more than once. They are really wicked. But it's a pretty plant. Evergreen, got pretty little flowers on there, but you can definitely stop trespassers from coming on your property with that. Okay, so we're still thinking about our plant selection here. Cold hardiness and heat tolerance is one thing to think about there. Microclimate, light requirement, moisture, all of these things very important. Soil pH, pest susceptibility. People get in a lot of trouble with this. They go buy this plant and not realizing it's got a problem. And so one thing we'll talk about is plants have different problems. I can tell you some of these that you know. When somebody calls and says, I've got a Japanese holly and it's died 3 times in the same place, almost always is going to be root rot. That's what happens to them. They're very susceptible, especially in our clay soils. Mature size. You know, you can buy this little plant at the garden center and think, that's cute. If it doesn't die, it's going to get big at some point in time. Okay, so we have these hardiness zones here. We're setting something, heat zone. This is one thing that aggravates me about buying a fruit tree. So you look in the fruit tree catalog, starts or whatever it is, and they're talking about, oh, this tree is hardened to zone 6. Okay. What they don't tell you, they don't tell you the chilling hours. They don't tell you when this thing's going to bloom. So plums, cherries, some peaches will bloom in February, and you're not going to have fruit. So while the tree's perfectly hardy, it's going to bloom too early. You're going to have problems with that. So there's no clear-cut line, so it's gonna vary. If you're in town, it's gonna be warmer than out in the country. It's always several degrees difference there. Heat tolerance is something that we don't usually talk about. Is if you think about white pines, they're perfectly hardy here. Cold temperature, not a problem. They just can't take our hot nights. So typically, in Alamance County, at least 25 years is an old white pine. So at that point in time, the tree gets big, it's having a hard time sustaining itself. It burns more energy at nighttime than it can make during the day, and over a period of time, it just declines and they just die. So they get to a certain size and age, and they just can't do that. So that's the same way if you have a live Fraser fir Christmas tree. Cold's not a problem. They cannot take the hot summers here. They will not survive. Microclimate, so you know that there are different places around your yard where plants grow better, places plants don't grow quite as well. You just have to understand how that is. You may have to take this plant you got it here, you may have to move it around 2 or 3 times before you get it to a place where it's going to be happy. So here's Miss Huff lantana, excellent plant. Really like this. Fairly hardy here, comes back for us every year. Beautiful plant. Well, here's planted underneath a crepe myrtle, got some homestep or verbena around it. Not the best soil there. It's doing okay compared to this one, which is in a bed by itself. No shade competition, no tree competition, no other plants in there. Both of these plants were planted at the same time. Both of them were in quart pots. Both of them were watered, but this one just had competition. The microclimate here is just not as good as the one over there in the bed by itself. It's much happier, grew much, much better. It makes a difference. So tree canopy can reduce temperature. If you got stuff underneath either house, so the overhang on our office there in Burlington is 4 feet. So we can't really grow anything underneath the eave of the building. It's just too dry in there. It's a little hard to tell. This is a garden around our office. So this is coleus. So I got coleus underneath the tree, coleus that's not underneath the tree. So it's probably only maybe 2 degrees difference there, but the coleus that were not under the tree got frosted. Where the coleus that has some protection from the tree did not. So just a matter of a few feet, a degree or 2 makes a difference in the microclimate there and how those plants survive and what didn't survive. So we know urban areas are warmer, absolutely there. We don't see this situation so much anymore. Now the trend is with new developments, they go on there and they blow off every tree there, and plants, random plants around the house, and you've got a whole different kind of landscape there than you would have had you left some of those nice trees. So sunlight and shade, we have what we call full sun plants, they've got shade plants, but there is some difference between those two, and it's not a hard and fast rule as to what can be sun and what can be shade. What is that plant? A cuba, right, so it's variegated cuba. Would you consider it to be a sun plant or shade plant? Generally speaking, you consider it to be a shade plant. Okay, so that's behind a Taco Bell in Burlington, full sun, beside an asphalt parking lot. It's not particularly happy, but it is tolerating full sun, which before I saw this, I was like, no way. But it's tolerating those conditions there. It prefer to be in some shade, but you can do that. How about this ground cover? Pakistan, sun or shade?
Shade.
You would think. So this is planted in a parking island down in Ashboro. Concrete, brick chip mulch. It's tolerating it. It's not happy. It's not happy. So you don't know, that probably not going to survive very long. It's just not happy there at all. Soil moisture and drainage. We have soil around here that's bad. It just won't perk. It's just bad. I got an azalea bed here, and they look unhappy. And you pull one up, and you go, oh, it's too wet. It's too wet. Well, I had the blueberry specialist come to our farm last month, and our blueberries weren't growing good, and he got a hold of the top of one of them and he shook it a little bit and the whole root bone looped. They've been in the ground for 2 years. And I had added pine bark and tilled to the end, but it wasn't crown sufficient in our soil before we drained. He said, you gotta dig them all up, fix the bed, put them back in. So 65 blueberry plants, so got those dug up yesterday. We won't be doing any tilling next couple of days now, but we're gonna redo the beds and try to fix the drainage. So you even have this kind of condition there, just really poor soil, poor drainage. There are plants that will survive in that, so there's a publication that's called Qualifiers for Quagmires. So there are plants that will tolerate these conditions, but azalea is not on that list.
So talk us through fixing your blueberry bed. You
Right.
pull all your blueberries out, and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm gonna come back in with more pine bark fines, probably add another 6 inches or so, till that in, and then crown the bed more. So I need to come up with another 6 inches or so in there. So it's a bit, I thought I'm hiring,
So it's like a raised bed
right,
thing.
right. So we initially put like 3 or 4 inches of pine bark fines in there and tilled it up. And so it was higher than the surrounding ground, but it wasn't high enough. We got poorly drained soil. So what we'll do, of course, if you're adding 6 inches, you can't do that at one time. So you put down 2 inches and till it, till that in, another 2 inches, till that in, another 2 inches, till that in, to try to get a more crown bed. If you throw it all at one time, the tiller only goes so deep that it won't get incorporated down into the existing soil. So it's going to be a process, but I'm hiring a landscape contractor to do that because I don't have the equipment. But we're trying to make it better. Okay. So ideally, as you're making your plant selection and think about all these things, you would think about what plants like wet spots. You would know what part of your yard is going to be wet. So you make sure that you've got plants that like wet spots in the wet areas and plants that like dry spots in the dry areas there, and don't mix them together because they're going to be unhappy. Okay, here's a typical townhome landscaping in Burlington. They've done the 4 bushes in 1 tree. And kind of tried to plant some grass and wasn't very successful there. It's hard to see in this picture, but you may notice those 2 plants right there, kind of brownish. They're dead. Those are Japanese hollies. What do we know about Japanese hollies? Root rot. They hate poorly drained soil. They will get root rot there. Going beyond that, those are a variety called compacta. So how big would a compacta Japanese holly get to be? Any idea? 6 foot, give or take. You would think though, with the name compacta, it's kind of like this. So it's like a dwarf Burford holly. How big would a dwarf Burford holly get to be? 10, 12, 50, I don't know. It's dwarf in comparison to Mama Burford, who's 20, 25 feet tall. So you think dwarf Burford is going to be, nope, it's not even that. So compacta hollies, basically the Japanese holly is a bad choice anyway because it's a clay soil. But I'll tell you what happens. This is a spec house. So the landscaper goes to the nursery, whatever, buy plants, and so he's got a choice. He can go, the one on the far left is dwarf Yopon holly, compacta holly, variegated privet. Okay. Well, let's see here. He's trying to get the most bang for the buck. He's trying to get some show. So, you know, if you go in there and plant those little dwarf Yopon in there, you're not really going to see them. And actually, you shouldn't have 4 bushes there, but 2 maybe. So he buys a compacta holly. Well, it's too big for the space. It won't tolerate the clay soil, but that's what they put in because it's a spec house. They're trying to get some show in there. So there's the 2 that have already died. If you get up a little closer, you see just red clay soil. So it's a slab construction. So there's no way to build the bed up. So just a real poor choice of plants there. Now those 2 died. So we know you can't replace them with the same thing because they'll get root rot as well. The ideal situation here is you pull all 4 of them up and you put in dwarf Yopon, which is tolerant of root rot. would be a better size, and wouldn't have the disease problem. Now, I will tell you that dwarf yellow pond, over a period of time, can also get to be this big. It takes a while, but I've seen them 6 foot tall dwarf yellow pond. But you could prune them, keep them down with somebody. Okay. We'll talk some about soil, and that's really sort of the key factor here is where you can, you want to amend the soil, make it better for our plants. You want our plants happy. So we want to have appropriate site preparation if it possibly can. So either we're going to fix the site for the plant or pick a plant that would fit the site so it qualifies for quagmires. If you've got a situation like this townhome where heavy red clay soil, slab construction, there's no real practical way to amend the soil and build the bed up, you've got to pick a plant that's going to be happy there and not adapt on top. So we can have red soil, very poorly drained. You need to amend that if you want the plants to do very well. So we got new construction there, and with new construction, you don't have native soil anymore. So you're going to have to do something to fix that soil to make our plants happy. Because you get this kind of thing here, they compact it, they got gravel in there, and all kinds of mess. And so the problem happens, and so they're working around the house, and you've got wet soils, you've had your soils class, so you know that if you drive equipment on wet clay soil, you're going to destroy the structure, pore space is going away, no air, it's going to hold a lot of water, it's going to be bad. Do they ever come back and fix this after the fact? Rarely. Almost always you're dealing with new homes with really compacted soil, poor drainage, and it's just not going to be a good situation for you all. We also have soils that are not compacted, but won't drain. So it's just it won't drain, won't perk for some particular reason. Not compacted, it's just wet in the state. So a situation like this, so you're planting on a berm there, would that be considered well-drained soil? Maybe. So you got good surface drainage, but the internal drainage on the side of the hill may be poor. So they can get saturated, a lot of water inside the soil, while the surface drainage is good. The internal drainage may be poor. You could have root rot on plants on a slope like that just because the internal drainage is poor. And some situations where you would do drain tile in there, that's, in my opinion, probably your last resort. Very expensive, and if it's not done right, it'll make the problem worse. You spend a lot of money there too. So ideally, you can address your drainage problems, surface drainage, grading, get the water away from the plant bed, away from the house without having to get into this. So raised beds is one thing we can do there. Raised beds typically will have better drainage, but not every time. So I went to see a lady several years ago down below Grave, and she had built this berm 12 feet wide, 200 feet long, planted it, everything was good, then the plant started dying. I went out there and got a hold of one of the dead plants and pulled it up, and it's sitting in water. So when the landscaper built the berm, he's driving his tractor back and forth on the soil, and it's sort of wet. He's compacted it, even though it's a nice berm, the internal drainage is terrible. So basically she had to pull up every plant that was still alive and redo that berm to get better drainage where plants would survive. So they can be better drained, but not every time. So we definitely want to amend the soil there, so a good organic matter to put in there, till it in, increase the aeration, the drain, increase the structure of the plants. It's going to be very, very beneficial to our plants. pH. So I talked to John Havlin last night. He said he was here last week. Through the soils and for fertilizers and with him. So we're going to have a test this morning. So you should know all this. So we'll talk about pH a little bit there. And this is an old slide set. So the old book said that you couldn't put lime and fertilizer out at the same time. I don't know if the new book says that or not. So lime and fertilizer at the same time. Does the book say you can't do that or can't do that? The old book said you couldn't do that. You can. But, yeah, that's not a problem. As we talk about compost, it can reduce fertilizer requirements, but don't think that's going to be all the nutrients that plants need. I work with some organic farmers and they use Brooks compost, good material, but it doesn't have a real high nitrogen content. So you've got to add something besides compost to get enough nutrients for the plants to grow. It does help somewhat with disease suppression, so you've got some good microbes in there that sort of help fight the bad microbes, so compost is a good thing. You do have to be careful though. The Brooks compost tends to run your pH up and your phosphorus levels up, so you have to watch soil test. I would do it on a yearly basis just to make sure that you don't get your pH and phosphorus jacked up too high, because that can happen over a period of time.
Is there an issue with too much phosphorus?
Yes.
What's the issue?
Leaching, getting to the groundwater,
Okay.
and into the river and Jordan Lake and all that kind of stuff there. So for the most part, phosphorus is tied up pretty well in soil particles, but it can erode and wash out. So at some point in time, there probably can be an antagonistic effect with other nutrients, availability,
Okay.
so we just don't want too high. Okay. Peat moss we don't recommend. It's a really fine particle. Our clay particles are very, very fine, so we need something coarse like a pine bark fines or leaf compost. Peat moss is not going to be good for us in our clay soils. We want something that's very well composted, so if you have a tree company there and they're chipping up a bunch of stuff, you can use the tree chips for some mulch, but you don't want to incorporate that into the soil until it has composted for a while. How much would you use? So basically 50% by volume, 3-inch depth, till it in 3 inches, and it works out pretty well to do that. So a cubic yard is going to cover about 100 square feet at a 3-inch depth, and that's a good rule of thumb. For most places, you may have to do more than that if you've got really poorly drained soils, but for the most part, 3-inch depth will work pretty well for us.
These slides are going to be posted on the website, aren't they?
Yes, yeah, Ashley has a presentation.
Thank you.
We're just tilling in, we're trying to get to a very well prepared bed, raised, got some good organic matter in there, improved drainage and aeration there to make our plants happy, so they're really going to grow well for us there. Okay, so we can buy plants as bare root, ball and burlap, container grown, and for the most part, we can plant about any time of the year. It's not too wet. So our ground doesn't really freeze to where we can't dig, but we certainly, in the past year, it can be way, way too wet for us to get out there and dig around. Unfortunately, this time of year, there's probably the most plants available, and people plant them. It's fine to plant in springtime, just don't go to the beach for a week and don't water. But brand new plants are probably not going to take neglect for a week or so. So you want to have the planting depth. This is where I see probably most of the problems when I go look at someone's landscape. They planted the plants too deep, and then they cover the root ball with red clay, so they can't breathe, and they die. What I usually say is I'd rather have my plant up out of the ground, probably an inch or inch and a half. So this is kind of the old thinking there, where you dug a big, deep hole and put compost in it, whatever it is there. But what happens is then that soil is going to settle, and then your root ball is going to be down in the basin and it's going to drain. So really the best thing to do is have the hole solid. So dig down probably an inch less than the height of the root ball. So the root ball is standing on solid ground. You backfill beside it, so there's no soil on top of the plant at all. Actually, there's no mulch on top of the root ball. You want to have the root ball exposed, so the soil comes to the side, practically an inch or so down below the top of the root ball, mulch to the side of the root ball, and that way you can see the root ball, you can feel the root ball. You're always going to have questions about how much do I water? It depends on the plant. But if you can touch the root ball, that gives you a pretty good idea whether it's wet or dry. So that's the way it should be done. Normally they say to plant the plant plant, if you're just doing one tree out in the middle of the yard, if you've got a container tree, you just use the native soil and you would not amend that. I always like to amend the soil. So if I've got a container tree that's all 100% pine bark pot soil and I'm planting red clay, I want to have my backfill 50-50 soil and pine bark, just to give it kind of a transition area to get out there. Now, if it's a ball and burrow out tree with field soil, it doesn't matter so much. But I like a transition layer, and ideally you're planting in a total prepared bed, but if you're planting a single tree in the middle of the yard, I like to have a little bit of a backfill mix with my trees. Always water your plants before planting. Like I said, the soil mixes of pine bark, and it can be dry. Once it's dry, it repels water. It's hard to wet them once you get them in the ground. So you want to make sure that root ball is really wet before you take it out of the pot, before you try to plant that. You will, a lot of times you'll find plants that are root bound. So when you go to buy a plant, I always pull them out of the pot. I want to look at the roots. You're buying roots for the most part, more so than the top of the tree. Top of the tree you can fix, but if you've got root bound or root rot, you're buying a problem. So you want to look at the roots and see what they are. Situations like that, you can fix. You just cut that off. So that you used to talk about, you can tee them out with your fingers, or you can make the vertical slice on them. What I prefer to do is shave the root ball. So I got an old kitchen knife, and I come through there, and I just shave the outside of the root ball all the way around. And that way you know you don't have any circling roots that are going to come back to be a girdling root later on. You just shave the whole thing, then you can plant it, and the plant will be fine.
Mark, can you also sort of go around and just pull the roots out?
Yeah. So if it's not very root bound at all, then you could just tease them
Yeah, sort
out.
of.
Yeah. If you get a situation where it's really thick like that, then that I would just slice that off completely. You're going to have a hard time teasing those out enough that you still wouldn't have kind of a kinked circling root there. But if it's not, ideally you buy a plant that's not like this, and you can get back and just tease them out enough, and it'll be fine. Okay, so they say you shouldn't add fertilizer when you plant. I always have. And the trick is with how much. So this is the problem, and I wouldn't tell people when they call me to do this, because if you tell them you want a quarter of a cup of 10-10-10 mixed in the planting hole, they go, okay, quarter of a cup, well, that's good. A full cup is probably 4 times better. And they'll do that. And that's where they'll kill the plant, is they use too much. So the right amount of fertilizer put in the hole is perfectly fine. I've done that for years and years. I never killed anything, but you're mixing that in with the backfill, and you're probably going to use, actually, if you're digging a good sized hole, half a cup of 10-10-10 wouldn't be too much as long as it's mixed in there and not dumped right on the roots. It would be okay, especially because we know phosphorus moves very slowly in the soil. We want to get that down in there where the roots can get to it. So a little bit's okay. They talk about making the basins around the trees and shrubs, and you can, that's fine. But typically what I like to do is have a drip irrigation system on there. So hand watering is a little bit tedious. Most people won't do that. So, but when you do water, you want to make sure you water thoroughly. So people have a tendency to go out there with the little car wash squirt thing, and they just squirt the plant. They get the leaves wet and squirt them on the ground. You're not really getting the soil wet. So you really need to wet the soil very thoroughly. We're trying to encourage that deep rooting. If you go out there and just spritz it off, you're not really helping the plant. Used to be back in the day, you could buy, that's a red tip Fatimia, you could buy in what they call the plantable pots. You always want to take those off, even though they're plantable. They really don't decompose like they say they do. I'd rather not have a plantable pot in the ground. Bare root plants, so a lot of fruit trees or roses, you'll get bare roots fine. In dormant season, you can plant those and do very, very well. You do want to have a little bit of a mound to put the roots on. so that you can spread them out. You don't get them all bunched up in the bottom of the hole, but they'll do very well like that. For burlap trees, we won't handle those very much. The planting technique's the same. We want the bottom of the hole to be solid. We don't want to dig it deep and fuss with it so our plant doesn't settle out. But typically, we won't handle ball and burlap trees because they're really heavy and hard to handle anyway. But you do see, you get this great big root ball there, and you would think, well, we're gonna have a lot of roots to deal with there, but that's not really the case. When they dig these things, all of the good roots are left out in the field. So all of our fibrous roots, feeding roots right in the field, you get some of these roots there. Sometimes they just don't live that well, but you're not really getting roots. I'd rather have a nice sized container tree that you can handle easy, and you got all the roots to deal with. All right, moving on to ground covers. People have for years, if they've got a slope, feel like they got to plant the entire thing with some ground cover or whatever, and almost always it's a problem. You're gonna have weeds in there that you can't maintain. There's a picture there. And that's not, but I see a lot around Burroughs, and I see what they have big slopes and just fill them full of plants, and then the weeds come. And you can't maintain them, it's a problem. So here, you got Bermuda grass, that's not really a problem. So there are selective grass herbicides that you can spray over top of that and control the Bermuda grass, but not hurt the plants. Problem is with broadleaf weeds, there aren't any selective broadleaf herbicides. So if you get broadleaf weeds in there, you're stuck pulling. That's tedious. Okay, fertilizing in the spring, and you can put some in the hole when you're planting. I think that's perfectly fine. A little slow release around the perimeter of the hole. Again, you got to be kind of cautious about that. In the book, it used to say fertilize March, April, May, July. I would say no, don't do that. So one application in March, and I would quit. As we know, as we get into summertime, it's going to get hot, it's going to get dry. You can definitely burn roots by applying fertilizer too late, even if you have drip irrigation. And for the most part, you don't want your plants to grow super vigorous. You want them to grow some, but the more they grow, the more possibility you have some pest problems or an extra pruning. So I'd be a little bit more conservative on the fertilizer. Now the test begins. All right, so Dr. Haven was here. You know all about fertilizer, you know about lime. Are these good products for us to use in Central North Carolina? Excellent, excellent, right. So typically our soil is very acid. Typically we need lime. So I've had situations where people call and say, my azaleas are yellow, they look terrible, whatever, and I've been using this mere acid stuff on them for the past 2 years. Well, have you taken a soil sample? Get a soil sample and the pH is 4.5. Okay, you need lime. You don't need that. So there are parts of the country where the soil is naturally alkaline, and that would be good there. You might have a situation where you could use this here, but you better get a soil sample first to know what the pH is. So you know about pH, okay? It's really important there. So if the pH is out of whack, then our plants won't grow. So most of our stuff is going to grow pretty well, let's say 6 to 6.5. As we get down to azaleas, we'd say 5.5. So what's the difference between a pH of 6.5 and a pH of 5.5?
It's a lot of difference.
Is that 1? 10, right. There's a logarithmic scale there, so that home run with the azaleas soil's pH of 4.5. So that's 10 times more acid than the azalea wants. That could be a real problem for us. You probably looked at soil sample reports there, and this one here, that pH is 4.2. So you got new construction, they stripped off the topsoil down to the subsoil, so we know the deeper you go in the soil, the lower the pH is. So we're down in the subsoil there. That recommendation there is 205 pounds of lime per 1,000 square feet. 4.2 pH. That's rough. So you really got to do some working to get that pH up to where plants are going to be able to survive. Did I show you this picture there? So we know we've got this little area here between pH 6 and 6.5 where most of our nutrients are available. As we go lower, you see the main nutrients we're looking for become less and less available. It doesn't mean they're not there, but they're tied up on the soil particles and the plants just can't dry them off. As you get down toward the bottom, you see aluminum. So as we get to lower pHs, aluminum becomes more available. At that point in time, we can have aluminum toxicity. So all kinds of bad things happen down at low pHs. We really got to be real careful about that. Some plants will tolerate that, but a lot of plants won't be very happy there at all. So definitely there could be a situation where you could have an azalea bed that needs to be limed. I mean, that will happen. You need to take your soil sample and see. Somewhere the literature will say take a soil test every 2, 3, 4 years. I say do it every year. You know, from April through Thanksgiving, it's free. It costs you $1 or $2 to mail it to Raleigh. That way you're not guessing. But if you wait 3 years, you know that pH is going to fall, and you don't want it to fall so much. You want to keep it kind of in an ideal range. Same thing with your nutrient levels. Take a soil sample every year. It's not that hard. That way you can sort of adjust a little bit rather than having a situation where you've got to add 200 pounds of lime per 1,000 square feet. You don't want to be there. So, maybe, but take a soil sample first to see, do you really need that or do you not? Okay, we've already done the lime thing there, so we've got powder or pellet. The dolomitic lime adds magnesium as well. So what we're trying to avoid is like this pH 5.2 in the middle. You've got very little root growth there, so you've got aluminum toxicity just burning the roots off the plant. Well, obviously, if you don't have good roots, you're not going to have good growth with your plant. So the story is, you know, there could be residual nutrients there in the soil. So if you've used a complete fertilizer for several years, there could be adequate phosphorus, could be adequate potassium already there. You may only have to add nitrogen. And that happens very often there. They talk about limiting factors with you. So plants have to have all these nutrients in certain quantities there, and any one of them that are limiting can limit the plant growth. So in the picture there, calcium is deficient, so it doesn't matter. You've got to have a sufficient amount of all of these plant nutrients for good plant growth. If you're deficient in anything, it's going to be an issue. The plants won't grow as well as what you're hoping for. So we don't want to guess. And we could, and I can guess pretty good. If you tell me what you've done over the past few years, I can make a pretty good guess about what you need as far as lime fertilizer. So I'll tell you a quick story. So I thought it was my advantage to go to church with my doctor. That way, if I have something question, I can just ask him after church. It's not an office visit and seem reasonable. Well, one day after church, I see my wife talk to my doctor over there, and they talk a little bit, they turn and look at me. And they talk some more and turn and look at me. Oh, this is not good. And so I go over there, and they say, well, you know, we're talking, you've gained some weight over the past few years, and I have. And I'm concerned about your blood pressure and cholesterol. Okay, that's fine. Well, he doesn't really know for sure if I got high blood pressure or cholesterol. So a blood test, he can make a pretty good guess, but he's just guessing. Of course, I have to be tested, and I got high blood pressure still. Anyway, but here's the thing you got to remember is, you know, if times get tough, you know, and he's one of these little skinny jockey guys. Times get tough. I've got a little reserve. I probably can last a little while on him. You know, I get some water. I'm in good shape for a week or two. He's not going to make it 3 days. And I said, and here's the bottom line. You always have to remember, skinny people die too. And almost always cranky because they didn't have that donut. And they're like, oh, no, I can't have that donut. So I was at the farmer's market back in the springtime. They had this display like that, and I'm trying to be good, and the guy's got some cookies there, and I was like, no, I can't. He said, is one cookie really gonna matter for you? You know, all right. So you know about fertilizer analysis. So you know 10-10-10 is a percentage of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium in the bag. So that's 30%. What's the rest of the bag?
Filler.
Just filler, right? So it could be lime, it could be sand, it could be whatever. It's just filler in there. Here's where we run into problems. Is they've got a fertilizer for everything there, and typically people have no clue. So new gardeners, whatever, they go in there and they see whatever. It's an azalea fertilizer, rose fertilizer, tomato fertilizer. Well, I've got all that, so you're buying 3 or 4 different things there, and it is very confusing. So what's the difference between these two products here? Right. The only thing that matters is the analysis. So I don't care if it says tomato, vegetable, plant food, or evergreen. That doesn't make a difference at all. That's just marketing. All we're concerned about is the analysis there. So if you put tomato plant food on an azalea, is it going to grow a tomato? No, it doesn't matter. Plants don't care. They don't read. It doesn't make a difference to them. It's the analysis, the only thing that makes a difference. How about the Polycone and tomato tone? So I see people buying tomato plants this time of year and buy tomato tone. It's like, okay, maybe we'll think about it.
What is
This, what's that?
There's no numbers.
Yeah, we'll look at the label. So I know everybody, you go to the grocery store, you're looking at the label, everything you buy. How much sugar, how much salt, how much everything in that. You study those labels, but do you look at labels of fertilizer? Probably not. So there are probably 12 at least of these tone products. You've got holly tone, tomato tone, plant tone, garden tone, bulb tone, tree tone, flower tone. I don't know. There's 12 of them. Okay. So you look at the label. 434, 346. Okay. It's a little different. It's not a lot different. And they're all like that. Within a point or two, so they change the analysis just enough to put a new name on it. So you'll buy something. So it's fine. It's a product's fine. But buy one. Doesn't matter, really, when it comes right down to it. So people think, well, the Polycone is more acid fertilizer. If you get down to reading, down to the label, actually the tomato tone might be more acid. It's got 3% sulfur versus 2% sulfur in Polycone, so sulfur would make it more acidic. I don't know, the tomato tone may be more acid, so it doesn't matter. It's the same stuff, basically. Doesn't really matter. So we don't want to look at the picture on the front and the fancy advertising. We want to see the analysis there because that's what tells us what it is. Doesn't matter. And it all comes from the same thing. So if you can read the fine print, the ingredients are exactly the same. Both products, they just tweak it just a touch to make a different number there, but it's the same fertilizer, basically. So we can, if you wanted to, you go to take the report and come up with an organic equivalent, perfectly fine. Whether you have a complete fertilizer like the Harmony Ag, or you can break it down to feather meal and bone meal with potassium sulfate, you can do those calculations. Not a problem. What I will tell you is you've got to be real careful with some of the organic fertilizers that come with a lot of feather meal in them. That smell attracts critters. So we used some a couple of years ago, planted a bunch of perennials in the garden, and we came back the next morning and they were all dug up. So we had a fox out there, loved the smell of fertilizer, digging up the plants to try and find something to eat. And he dug them up every night for like 2 weeks in a row. So the smell finally went away, so you've got to be careful about there. So we've got a lime recommendation there, fertilizer recommendation there. What happens a lot of times is they'll give you several, so that's a 10-10-10, the one above it is a 15-0-14. And if you've got 4 or 5 samples there, you don't want to buy 5 fertilizers. So what I always try and do is say, okay, let's look at this and go, what can you do to make this a little bit easier? Our phosphorus there on top one is 85. I would say, let's just roll with 10, 10, 10 this year. It's not that high phosphorus. Hopefully by next year, you'll have adequate phosphorus and potassium in both samples, and then you can just go with straight nitrogen fertilizer, which is what they got up on that top sample here. You can't really see 5 pounds of 2100. So we know at that point in time we have adequate phosphorus, adequate potassium. All we need is nitrogen, and we're pretty good. So you probably could have done 10, 10, 10 on everything this year, and next year going to a straight nitrogen fertilizer without having to add everything else too. Okay. There you go. So we have lots of different nitrogen sources you can get there, whether it's synthetic or organic. The only thing to remember about the organic is they have to be broken down before plants can use them. So you need a little bit of leeway there, so probably 30 days for these things to break down. So if you're going to plant tomatoes next month, maybe you go ahead, it's dry enough, go ahead and till in some feather meal, let it start breaking down so it's available for the tomatoes when you plant them. Urea, which I didn't realize, is volatile. So you put that on top of the ground, in 24 hours, it just vaporizes. So it's okay to use if you're going to till it in or water it in. If you spread it on top of the ground, it's just going to go away, which I learned a couple of years ago. I bought some, but well, that's a bargain for the amount of nitrogen I got. So I spread them along, the next morning, it's gone. So that didn't work. Okay, but we can't have too much nitrogen, so that certainly is an issue that we can run into there. So we do want to be careful as we're adding our fertilizer there. Care for new installed plants there. So talking about watering, it's always going to be a problem. I'm always going to ask that question. It depends on the weather, it depends on the plant. There's so many factors, it depends on the soil. So the bottom line is, when you water, soak them thoroughly, and then give them a day or two to kind of dry out some, because you can definitely overwater plants and kill them just as fast as you can by not watering at all. We know that an inch of water is 625 gallons on over 1,000 square feet. So this room is probably close to 1,000 square feet. So it would take 625 gallons of water to get an inch of water here. The problem we have is with our soil, it may only absorb a quarter to a third of an inch an hour. So we have a big thunderstorm and most of the water runs off. So people will call up and say, my plants died, but it's rained all the time. But it's been thunderstorms and the water's running off. So you can go back out there after a thunderstorm and scratch down through the mulch and it's dry. You got about an inch or so and it's dry. So you may have to water after a big thunderstorm to get the soil moist enough to support the plants. So hand watering there really is not very efficient. So you've got a little squirting thing there. That may be okay to wash off an aphid or a white fly, but you're not really helping the plant as far as the moisture it needs to survive. Gator bags work very well. So for a newly planted tree, you can put these gator bags around them. They got small holes in the bottom. You can fill them full of water, and it drips out slowly over a period of time. So in the first year or two, that works pretty well until the roots get out past the gator bag. So drip irrigation is a way to go for new plants, and you can have a very simple drip system that just hooks to the garden hose. You don't have to have fancy timers and whatnot. You can put these things out fairly cheaply. But it's very efficient use of water. You don't get the foliage wet, reduces diseases. It really works very well. So this is kind of an old kind of drip system. You used to stick those emitters into the tube, and then about half the time they'd pop out, and then you have a little geyser coming up through the landscape. They've now got them where the emitters are formed in the tubing. So you hook it up, run it, works great. In some situations, maybe an annual bed, you have a micro sprinkler, but all this is on the drip system, so it works really, really well. Very efficient use of water. Have y'all had water restrictions in Durham in the past several years?
Not for a few years.
Yeah, it's every other.
Yeah.
For water.
Okay, so when I was in Orange County in 2007, and and they had a bank.
Everybody has.
You know,
And there was no water, and so people called me, and I was like, no, don't plant anything. No, you just don't do that. Then the nursery people called me and said, what are you saying? You know, I understand, and I work with homeowners and commercial people, but it's not responsible for me to go, buy plants. You can't water them, but I understand, I don't want to hurt your business, but if you can't water them, you can't water them. So, you know, if you have to get that situation, you think about what would you water, what would you not water there, and mature trees, so people think, well, these mature trees have been there for 50, 60, 70 years, they're fine. Well, what I would say is, if you have a nice mature tree and we get in a drought situation, you better water it. Because when they get stressed, that's when insects and diseases will attack them and you will lose them. Now, you don't have to water them all the time. You know, once every 3 or 4 weeks, you put out the sprinkler and you run it for a day or whatever it is. Thorough soaking. Don't make the tree work so hard to get moisture, and it'll thank you for it. Some of the other stuff, the little flowers and whatnot, if it dies, it's fine. It may be a problem. Okay. Mature size. So I think what we'll do, actually, this is a fairly long section. We'll just stop here and do breaks a little early, but then we'll roll on with that after that.
What is your name?
Mark Danieley.
Danieley?
Danieley. D-A-N-I-E-L-E-Y. They always